Good evening. Welcome to The Late Show. It is a Wednesday evening, and Tim, Vince and myself and guys in the control room are with you for the next 50 odd minutes. I want to say that the title of this program tonight is What It Costs to Be a Survivor. Yeah, what does it cost to be a survivor? Now, Tim, I'm thinking about scriptures like, he who loses his life for my sake will gain it. You know, so that's obviously looking at a time in the future if we were to be, if you like, killed, you know, slaughtered, imprisoned and then beheaded like John the Baptist or whatever. But the reassurance is there in the scriptures. Can you think of some others?
Scriptures on survival. I was thinking just generally about survival and survivor's guilt. You know, people that when they've seen loved ones who haven't survived and they survive, there's a kind of survivor's guilt, they call it, or survivor's remorse. I remember many years ago, Enoch Powell being asked on a Desert Island Discs on the radio if he had any regrets. And he said, I regret that I didn't die in the war. They were expecting something from his political life. He said, I lost so many great friends and people greater than I felt I should have died.
Yeah, well, do you know, that's interesting because there are people in the secular, not outside of Christianity, who find themselves surviving a disaster or whatever and suddenly feeling guilty that they should have survived. Yeah. And that's survivor's guilt, is it not?
I think so, yeah.
Do you think?
And things like the Titanic, you know, people took their lives. I mean, that's the cost. They couldn't cope with it mentally, what the trauma that they had seen and seen others go through. Yeah.
Well, we've got a little bit of a surprise for you tonight, in the sense that we're going to be showing someone who's actually a survivor in every sense of the word, someone who survived the Holocaust, and of course gained notoriety in the positive way because of her attitude towards those who really could have killed her, but also at the same time actually killed her mum and dad and her brother. I'm going to leave it a little bit as a surprise, but I've got some parts of the interview that we did only like a couple of years ago. I look like I'm 17. No, I've aged so much, I'm sorry about that, but it's life at the moment. But I would like to say that this particular lady is something really special because of all that she went through, Tim. I know you know what I'm going to talk about, but I don't want to mention her name just yet because I want you to see the heart of this person who survived and went through all sorts of horrific times and yet still did not have hate in her heart. Let me show you a little bit in reverse, if you like, before we go into other parts, and we'll be taking you're inviting you to take part live at revelationtv.com and all the rest of it. But I want you to see the heart of this lady because it's something really special and precious. Have a watch of segment 1.
There was no thinking. Because thinking is dangerous.
Your family was Orthodox.
Yes.
So how did you feel? How did you cope? I mean, in the sense of, I was aware that Elie Wiesel, who wrote that book, Night, he said, that day my God died. Did you ever have those sort of feelings that God had abandoned you?
I never did. I didn't think about it too much. Deep down, I think my faith has never been broken. I remember seeing, and I think that seeing has been sort of been repeated by other survivors. I looked at the sky, and I could see or I imagined, just a bright sun spoke to me. And I don't know, I interpreted it, God survives, God never died. And that that strength, I think, carried me through.
So this was more like a vision that you
A
had.
vision.
Beautiful. God.
In the midst of such horror. Yeah. Occasionally I think of it today, to this day.
So Susan, what happened then next to you? Along comes the end of the war.
Along comes the end of the war. I was dying. And death was all around me. Mountains of corpses. I crawled out because I couldn't stay there anymore. And the British came. The British soldier must have seen a twitch in my body, picked me up. I remember the gentleness. Suddenly, what's going on? Suddenly, gentleness. I hadn't confronted that for so long. And he picked me up with such care, put me on that small ambulance and took me to a sort of a clean bed. It was clean beds, and a sort of a hospital-like environment, where I stayed for a week or two, and then I was taken to Sweden for recovery, where I spent 2 years, and they were very kind and helpful to me. And physical recovery was possible. Still, many of us continue to die because they didn't know that food should have been restricted, so we got too much and ate too much. And that, of course, wasn't a good thing. Emotional discovery, mental discovery.
Coming to terms with the death of your father, your mother, and your brother?
I did not cope with that at the beginning. I just realized that it's a different world outside, that kindness maybe survived.
Yeah, Susan Pollack, MBE, beautiful spirit. How can someone go through what she went through and still have no hatred in her heart for her enemies and those who persecuted her? Not only her, but took the life of her parents and her brother, and nearly took her life as well. Tim, what an amazing example.
I'm just thrilled that we met her, and it came about because I think she was initially interviewed by Simon. It may have been with you.
Simon in a minute.
And a viewer wrote in because she said she'd never been to Israel. I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
And we had a trip within a month or so after that, and a viewer paid for her trip to come with us.
No, it was beautiful.
It was the most moving thing. Yeah.
Did you ever get any feedback as to what she thought about being amongst Christians who supported Jews?
Oh, she loved it. She was with us on all the tours,
Yeah.
you see, and they were all Christian sites.
Yeah.
And I remember my kids were there when we got to Jaffa, and I remember seeing, I've got a picture of them just sitting with her and listening to the stories.
Lovely.
What an experience for young kids in their late teens.
Yes, especially this generation.
Really, really something. And then she came with us to Yad Vashem, to the Valley of the Communities, where 5,000 communities were destroyed. And I remember her pointing out where hers was, and it was powerful. Very.
Well, we've put the live at revelationtv.com and the SMS number on there. We want to hear from you. You know, just something that you may want to interact, maybe ask a question, whatever. I'm not saying that we know all the answers or anything, but, you know, one of the things that Jesus spoke about very clearly was to love your enemies, to forgive those who've done you wrong and things. I find it, I've said it before, very difficult, especially the older I get, the harder it is to forgive those who've actually done us wrong. And but, you know, maybe one day that grace will come, you know, that I can forgive. But Susan is the epitome of what Jesus really was all about in that sense. What I would like to do next is, I've got several of these segments, if you like, throughout the evening. And we'll play the next one because it starts to go into more depth about how Susan actually dealt with the situation back then, 80 years ago. Let's have a look at this.
An incredible journey through life. A Holocaust survivor. Thank you very much, Susan Pollack, for being with us on Revelation TV Live.
Well, for me it's an honor to be here, and I'm very grateful to you all. I'm very grateful that I feel relaxed, I feel confident and wanted.
Yes, you're definitely wanted, Susan, because I'm introduced by my co-host is Simon Barrett. All our viewers know Simon, but Simon, you just in a quick way, you can explain that you had Susan on your program a year ago, wasn't
Absolutely, yes. Susan was my guest last year on the Middle East Reports, did such a fantastic job. We had to have her back again. And I consider Susan a friend because she has so much courage and so much passion to tell her story, and it's just incredible. I mean, she was only saying that she was in the European Parliament yesterday. I missed her by a day because I was filming the European Report on Tuesday, and it would have been fantastic to have her on the programme. But to actually speak up and have the courage that she has, even to challenge the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, on the issue of anti-Semitism. And she's not afraid of tackling the big issues. So, perfect guest for you tonight, Howard,
Yes.
to mark International Holocaust Memorial Day.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. That's the first thing. Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity to talk about my history, my family, and my experiences. It's so very important to look back. We need to learn, and we need to make a strong commitment for creating a good future for all of us. And it's a good position to be in. And when I had finally been liberated, I think in my simple way, I've made a commitment that I'm going to talk about it because it's so very important for me as well. It's been my therapy all along to share it and to warn against any form of racism, anti-Semitism.
We got quite a lot of in-depth account and recollections from Susan, which are quite not only moving but also quite horrific. So I do warn you as the viewers that if you're quite sensitive to seeing certain images and things like that, I do give you a warning. I should have made it a little bit earlier in the program, sorry about that, but it is devastating. But let me just say this, you know, because something, Tim, that I had to do with my update for the Holocaust and going to Auschwitz myself with my little GoPro camera in my hand, was that they've now made it restricted to anyone under 18 cannot watch the video. Now, I take issue with that, Tim, because when I was 14 years of age, and I must have seen it, we just bought a television. I was that age when we could afford a television. And I saw it must have been on the BBC, because that's about all there was then. And I would say seeing the images raw had more impact on me as a 14-year-old that made me say to my parents, how could you, your generation, allow this to happen? Mm-hmm. If the images had been all blurred, which we have to do today, and anyone under 18 years of age is not allowed to see it, actually is never going to have the impact that it had on me when I saw it, Tim.
Well, when we were preparing our early tours to Israel, they were building the new Yad Vashem museum, this amazing dynamic prism that goes through the mountainside. And I met the director of Yad Vashem. I had very young children then. And I said, what age is too young for children to visit this museum? And he paused and he said, well, there was no age that was too young for the children that went through the gas chambers.
Yeah, wow. Maybe Google or YouTube actually need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And hiding it all from Gen Z or whatever you want to call
then
it.
Can have a caricature of the same Jewish people who are the victims,
Yeah.
and grow up learning that the Jewish people are the oppressors and that they are oppressing the Palestinian people. There's no narrative of the years and decades of hatred towards the Jewish people. They don't know it, so they think, oh well, that must be true.
Yeah, exactly.
They go and
So
rip
that-
off the posters of hostages from October the 7th. How can you do that unless you've got a completely warped education?
Yeah, which they have. Okay, but let's look at the next clip that I've got here of Susan, because it is going to build, and you are going, I'm warning you, well, hopefully it is moving, because it shouldn't have happened. And it couldn't have happened to a nicer person and a family such as Susan Pollack's.
Well, I'm a village person, not far from Budapest. And we lived in this little village. That's where I was born. I liked the simple life. Of course, we had no idea what the future will hold for us. We couldn't imagine. I must say, there was always in the background anti-Semitism. But it was controlled. But we didn't take it too seriously. And in any case, where could we have gone? We know that 1938, that Avion conference, for instance, when the threat was known worldwide, what Hitler planned against us. And there might have been an opportunity to seek refuge somewhere, but it wasn't available in any real situation. Maybe a few countries accepted a few. So all was left to us is pray and hope that the Allied forces will be coming soon and somehow rescue us. But we could not imagine, in the wildest of fears, what was awaiting us. Well, it was already happening everywhere. But we were living in we had a sheltered life. And of course, the news was managed.
Managed in what way?
Well, we didn't hear anything about the plans, the Wannsee conference, for instance, where gentlemen with their PhDs had planned our destruction. We did not know. Nor did we know that Babi Yar took place. So many Jews had been murdered. Nothing. All we could hear was occasionally resettlement program might be coming for us, but no one explained anything. Are we going to survive as a family? And as hope springs so strong in one's being, everything came back in the affirmative. Yes, we will. And we just thought, let the Allied forces be quick to rescue us.
Interesting, Tim, that Susan was saying that really she knew there was no way of escape. What country would take them? You know,
Yeah.
It was, anti-Semitism was rife again, building up to a crescendo that really brought on what it did. In fact, living in Budapest, where she was from. What you mentioned something why she saw that.
Well, Budapest Jews were rounded up by Adolf Eichmann at the end of the war. Many were saved through Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish banker, who gave them Swedish passports. But she would have been, you know, and Adolf Eichmann, she mentioned the Wannsee conference. He was the secretary to that conference who convened it. He was a fanatic, you know, implementer of the final solution. And so there were all these Jews in Budapest who he, you know, in the final months of the war, he wheeled them off to Auschwitz, maybe up to 1 million. It was a very large number. And that's why he was tried by the Israelis. He was caught down in Brazil, I think it was, and he was brought back to Israel and, you know, faced trial in the 60s for mass murder.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, as we go to this next section as well of Susan's life stories, it is really moving, and do take part live at revelationtv.com. Have a listen.
We had a call up, we had a letter from the local council, attend this meeting where this plan, this resettlement program will be discussed. They didn't trust the local council anymore. There were about 16 Jewish families living in this village, Felsjögud, where I was born. But they thought it's better to know. And so they went, they attended the meeting, and then shortly after we had a call, come along and be a member of this meeting. So we did, my mom, my brother, and myself, we went along, and I had seen my father being brutally beaten up in front of my eyes. They were herded onto a waiting lorry. I hadn't seen him since. He was taken away with all the other men, and we knew where they were taken to, but we were wearing the yellow star by then. Didn't help us. We weren't allowed to use the public transport anymore. So we sent a local lady, local Christian woman with a basket of food to take to him. And she came back with the information that just as well we hadn't seen him because he was unrecognizable.
Be beaten.
Beaten, starved, threatened, dehumanized. And then we were told by the Hungarian gendarmerie, I hadn't seen any Germans. I'm speaking about the Hungarians. Get ready, start baking your bread, as we normally did. Get some food ready in your backpack from a sheet, because we'll be going on this
Journey.
On this resettlement program. So we did. We were up all night. And we had the sheet on our backs. I'm carrying a single sewing machine. Little girl as I was.
How old were you? How old were you then?
I was not 13 yet. I thought perhaps I might be able to help for my family, to sustain my family. I was pretty good on the sewing machine. Children were brought up differently in those days. And at first we were taken to a ghetto in a nearby town called Vats. And we were eating the food. My mom said, here's a handkerchief holding some broken gold teeth. Throw it in the loo outside. Because we were afraid to be found with it. Mm-hmm. Because of the malicious gossip that the Jews had gold hoarders. So I threw it in. Not long after, a few days later, we were taken to another nearby, by train we went, nearby into camp, internment camp. It was an open, previously used mine. We were sleeping outdoors. It was in 1944. July. And my brother and myself occasionally attached ourselves to other queues. This one promised bread distribution. We never got any. That queue offered, yes, if you convert to Christianity, you might be exempted. But of course it didn't apply to us, because it had to go back, I think, not way back. And we didn't want to convert anyway. No. Then we had been told to start marching. Marching to a waiting cattle train. Long march. I'm carrying this heavy single sewing machine on my back. So we marched and marched. Finally we got to the train. And with some straw on the floor, pushed in a lot of women, mothers with their children and babies. Men were taken away before, so there were just some elderly and elderly men, a few of them. The doors were shut. Of course, the windows, there were no windows, just some closers. And then we knew we were trapped. This is not going to be no resettlement. But we had no imagination to think, what else could it be? So a few days later, maybe six days, perhaps, we arrived. The doors were open. Fresh air, wonderful. We got somewhere. And then the terror hit us immediately. Many of us died along the way, lack of water. There were only 2 buckets, one for water, one for human soil. For 80, 90 people, both spilled all the time. There was no water. As a consequence, many children died. And the aggression hit us, shouting, "Los herein, out." Well, most of us couldn't walk anymore. So we scrambled out, my mom, my brother, myself, and then someone like this, forget his name, who was tried recently, and I attended that trial. It might have been him. Get everything out from your pocket, place it on the ramp. We had nothing.
Was this a German commandant?
The German, yeah.
The one made famous by
Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the earlier victims, who had been there, spoke Hungarian, whispered to us, "Don't say you're younger than 15 years old."
Why?
I didn't know. I just nodded. So when the German Nazi came, bist du, I could speak a bit of German. I said, "I'm 15 years old," because I was reasonably tall for that age. And that's what saved me.
Otherwise, you'd have gone straight
Otherwise,
to the
I would
gas.
have gone to the gas chamber. Yeah. Useless. You were only assessed by your height and the ability, presumably the ability to do a short term.
So where was your brother and your mother?
Next to me. My mum, she was in her 40s, worn, fatigued, and tired, confused. She was gassed on arrival.
So you should be starting to see and build a picture of what Susan went through. There's even more that she shares tonight, but as I say, live at revelationtv.com. I know most of you, as you usually do, is you interact a little bit later on because you're engaged in watching this wonderful interview. Sadly, I call it a wonderful interview, but it is heartwarming, is it not? Mm. You picked up on a couple of things through that?
Yeah, she mentioned Babi Yar, that's in Ukraine. There was over 30,000 were shot, by the Einsatzgruppen into a ravine. And then the Germans thought, well, we're wasting too many bullets, and then they started the gas chambers. Her life story is almost like a historic perspective of what happened through those years, and it's pretty powerful. And then she mentioned it must have been Krakow, because I think Simon mentioned it was Amon Gott, his name was, who was the commandant there at the the camp.
Auschwitz.
Yeah, which they were then shipped off, and it's not that far. You can fly into Krakow and just take an hour and a half. You probably did it
yes.
to Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Yeah. Okay, got a very short one next, but let's go there and see what Susan shares.
Mm.
And how old was your brother?
2 years older than myself.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably 15, maybe not even that yet.
And then what happened next?
Well, then they made us to throw away the clothes that we wore, shaved our hair, thrown some disinfectant on our naked body, and took us to barrack with other girls, about 1,000 girls, 800 girls. And we were on the top level. There were three platforms, and I was on the top with the girls, totally confused.
Were you made to work?
Not yet. At first we were regularly inspected. Dropped the clothes, stark naked, marched in front of the Nazi officer. I think it was Dr. Mengele.
Oh, dear.
And we knew what was going on, why he was doing it, to see who was losing weight rapidly.
That would be all of you.
And if, according to his estimate, we lost too quickly, useless for slave labor, into the gas chamber.
So, Tim, it seems like Susan and the likes of her actually couldn't win to survive, because you needed to be strong enough to work if you're going to be of any use to them whatsoever. And interesting, she said you had to say that you were 15. Anything younger, you were deemed to be useless, and you would have been gassed or incinerated. Yeah. So, are you starting to see a little bit about what Susan? How was she coping
I would
mentally?
say it's a miracle.
Yeah,
that she got through it.
Yeah, she says that, funnily enough.
Yeah, I think it's a miracle. She should have been, because when they came off the cattle wagons, they were separated like that. Mm-hmm. You go to death, you go to the, labour. She was somewhere in the middle of that division. It's an amazing story. I'm sort of so captivated. Of course, we've got a few emails coming in. Judith says, we shouldn't have favourites, but Susan is my favourite. Over the years that I've been with Rev TV, thanks to Simon, I've seen and listened to quite a few Holocaust survivors. I thank God that I have been educated by Revelation TV regarding the preciousness of the Jewish people. That's from Judith. Sveta says, thank you for this inspiring story of this lovely woman. They are a truly special people. No matter how the world hates them, they still have a heart to forgive and still have compassion towards their neighbour. Thanks again for your programme, Standing with God's Chosen People. God will indeed bless those who bless his people. And then Jean says, it's very difficult to forgive someone who has determined to do ill to you. We can't do it on our own. We need the help and strength of the Holy Spirit within us. But the lady who is speaking in regards to her life and the excruciating loss of her family during the Holocaust is absolutely Christ-like. It actually shows the strength within her because of her faith. It is heartbreaking to listen to her with such gentleness in her voice. Thank you for sharing this with us.
That's why it was so precious, and I was thinking, what could I share with you tonight that was poignant and sort of heartwarming, but at the same time inspirational, because we're all going to face that time and what it costs to be a survivor. Even if we lose our life, we're still a survivor because of the Lord's provision for those who give up their life.
On that, Paul and Ruth said, David was a survivor in the face of Goliath. He trusted in the strength of God. He wore no armour. God was his armour. He demonstrates that when we are weak, we are strong. Susan Pollack is a lovely example of humbleness. God bless her. And then someone's mentioning different examples of survival in the Bible. To be a survivor, especially in the tribulation, we'll need the Bible, but what if it's taken from us? I can answer that. Corrie ten Boom.
Yeah.
And the other one is memorising it.
Exactly, and that's why we inculcate into our, not only our children, but into ourselves by reading it in an undertone day and night, you know.
And Irene says she's learnt 8 Psalms.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. The Magi's visit, the shepherds, John 1, 1 Corinthians 15, Romans 10, 8 and 9. They can't take that from me. I totally agree, Irene. I'm on the same page 100%.
Yeah.
Get it in.
We've got 3 more to share with you, so let's go to the next one. It's only 3 minutes long, but another part of Susan's life.
Within a short time, I was dehumanized. I had no more feelings, you know, no more hope, no more feelings, no more me. I was just a robot, nothing. He selected me. I didn't care. And that was for slave labor. I was sent there on train to a big German town. We marched, a few girls, we marched to our work. Was doing some electronic checking. I was shown when these lights, when these two apparatus light up, it's okay. I can't remember now, but that's what I was doing. So the food increased more than what I had in Auschwitz, because that was nothing. It was just some coffee in the morning, maybe a piece of bread.
How did you cope mentally? How did the psychological effect that seeing your family already lose their lives, how did you cope and manage to survive mentally?
At first, while I still had the capacity to think, because to think you need food, you need some, and we set up a fantasy game, and this fantasy allowed us to escape the reality, the harsh reality of the conditions we were in. So from girl to girl, we played it. And what will you have for breakfast this morning? We were starving.
So
not
you
hunger,
fantasize.
but we remembered our home life. I'll have a piece of bread, maybe an egg, perhaps some butter on that bread, and we could taste it.
Wow.
And so it went from girl to girl. It didn't last very long because we were losing weight so rapidly. So that was helpful. Other than that, there was no thinking. Because thinking is dangerous.
What amazes me, because I heard the rest of your story as well, is that you have not got such an animosity or a hatred towards mankind. And I don't want to mention necessarily individuals, but you have an amazing attitude that's kept you going all these years.
No, hate I don't possess.
That's obvious.
Yeah, hate I don't possess. I realize that, well, I don't like to kind of put myself in a category to say that that I am totally without some form of caution against human beings behaving in an unacceptable way.
Hate I do not possess, she said, after all that she went through, and yet could have felt so easily the animosity, at the very least, if not hatred, towards those who killed her.
What an antidote.
Her dad,
yeah,
and her brother.
What an antidote to the hatred of Hitler and the Nazis towards her.
And to Hamas.
Yeah, yeah.
The hatred that they instill into their own children against the Jews to even this day is so horrible.
I mean, there are some within Israel who obviously, you know, respond, you know, and you know, real aggression rises up within them. But I've met many Israelis who who want peace so desperately that they will forgive whatever Hamas has done.
Yeah. And
Remarkable.
Golda Meir, what did she say?
Well,
Very
we'll
famous
have
line.
peace. We'll have peace when they love their children more than they hate ours.
That would put Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, all those people, to shame.
Or say they'll hate it all the more that such generosity and grace is shown, because they're demonized, and Satan hates God's love and God's truth. He just screams, through the herd of swine and gets them over the cliff as quickly as possible, so they don't have to listen to Jesus.
Let's go to this short segment as well next with Susan.
So how do you feel today, having come through 70 years or more, and seeing what's happening in the world today with the rise of anti-Semitism again? Do you feel that perhaps there's a time that the Jews, the Jewish people, need to seek perhaps not just asylum, but actually to make Aliyah?
Yes. I did want to go to Israel when I was physically stronger, but not strong enough. When did I? 1945, 47, 46.
You went to Canada, is that right?
From there I went to Canada, yes. Yes, a shaliach came out from Israel and took in some strong guys. It needed a lot of work in those days.
With the kibbutz and everything, that was hard work.
And of course the malaria was still ripe in Israel, and you had to do physical, heavy work. I wasn't capable of doing it. I would have gone. So they sent me to Canada, and there I met my husband-to-be, and I got married when I was 18 years old. And that was the start of building a new life. And since then, well, there was a long period when I had worked and, in partnership with my husband. And later on, I gained education because I lost education completely. In Hungary, I only had primary school education, and later on, I got a degree. I used to go to evening classes, and we had children together, of course. And then I became a Samaritan.
Very good.
She is a good Samaritan, is she
amazing.
not? Yeah. We're running short of time, so I'm going to quickly go to the last segment. I'll just give a warning again. There are images which I've had to blur out, but still can be seen in a way. But let's just remember that what happened all those years ago, 80 years ago, when it was liberated, Auschwitz was liberated, did take place, and it was horrific. Let's watch this.
I would like to show a clip that I made when I went to Auschwitz just a couple of years ago. I was playing football over there in Krakow, and I knew that this was an opportunity to visit Auschwitz, and I think it would be good to show our viewers, remind them just what it was like.
April 2017, and I'm in Poland right now, travelling from Krakow to a Nazi concentration camp. I know I'm going to be reminded of those horrific images that I first saw on television when I was a young boy. I asked my parents, why didn't someone do something to stop this cruel torture and mass killing? I don't recall getting an answer. And here I am, nearly 72 years on, and I'm still none the wiser, still trying to figure out how man could be so insensitive and callous towards his fellow man, and especially towards the children. Question: where do you think the largest mass murder in a single place in human history took place. Right here, Auschwitz-Birkenau. Auschwitz, which covered 40 square kilometers, was first constructed to hold Polish political prisoners who began to arrive in May 1940. The first extermination of prisoners took place in September 1941. And also Auschwitz went on to become a major site of the Nazi final solution to the Jewish question, which meant calling for all European Jews to be gassed, shot, or put to death by any other means. In 1942 was the beginning of the deportations of 1.1 million Jews. Auschwitz started fulfilling two functions. Whilst remaining a concentration camp, it became yet another site of the Holocaust. The biggest mass murder in the history of mankind, perpetrated by the Nazis, where about 1 million were murdered by the SS, mainly in gas chambers. In September 1941, the first experimental mass killing with gas, Cyclone B, took place in the basement of this building. Block 11 was known as the Death Block. In the basement, known as the bunker, were the punishment cells where the SS confined prisoners to be sentenced to death by starvation. It is written on this plaque, "We are in a building where the SS murdered thousands of people. Please maintain silence here. Remember their suffering and show respect for their memory."
6 million people crying from the grave. Invisible people calling out their name. Beautiful people taken from their homes. Scattered people, nowhere to go. And the mothers and fathers and the sons and daughters, they were carried away in trains. Their bodies were broken and beaten and burned, and their ashes fell down like rain. They were branded with a number and a yellow star and paraded around in shame. They called it a crime to be born a Jew, and in the name of God they were slain. The forgotten people. Calling out, calling out, calling out. 6 million people. Crying out, crying out, crying out. The forgotten people. Calling out, calling out, calling out. The chosen people. Crying out, crying out, crying out. Blessed people who tried to help, while evil people schemed among themselves. Everyday people who ignored the news. Oh, indifferent people sitting in the pews. Sound the alarm, shouting never again. Let the righteous revolution begin. History must never repeat itself. So lift your voices and take a stand. United as one small Zion's head. United as the nations rage. We've got to rise like an army in the day for the nation that was born in a day. The forgotten people. Calling out, calling out, calling out. 6 million people. Crying out, crying out, crying out. The forgotten people. Calling out, calling out, calling out. The chosen people. Crying out, crying out, crying out.
I'll read some of your emails. This is from Kevin. Tonight's Late Show is very moving. It just shows how evil some people can be. It's like Satan had his hand in that, just like he did during the time of Moses when he was born, and new forms, more life forms were getting killed, and also when Jesus was born, and what blood Herod something was so great he did to the babies to stop God's promise. It looks like there is a pattern there. I think Satan knew that when Israel is back, his time will be short. And Jen says, hi both, Susan was so brave. It breaks my heart when I think of what the Jews went through, how people could be so evil. The poor children makes me cry. All the horrible things that were done to them was pure evil. How could another human do that to someone? It's beyond me. Definitely the devil's work. And then this is from Margaret. Thank you for the dignity with which you present this program about Susan, who survived the Holocaust. Susan gives the facts without showing emotion. I remember reading a book called The Bitter Herb by Marga Minko. She too was a survivor and wrote in the same way as Susan is speaking. Our teacher said that the emotions had disappeared, because the experiences had been so horrific. It made a deep impression on us. We were 16. Cynthia says, hate does not achieve anything, only festers inside you, no matter how much it pulls you down. And then Jane says, we're watching your moving programme. I had the great privilege of sitting by Susan Pollack at Yad Vashem on the visit we had there. And she spoke words into my life that I never forget and have written in the back of my Bible. She said, be strong, you are beautiful, be confident in who you are. Amazingly encouraging words from such a wonderful woman that I take as a message for my life. Thank you, dear Susan, for your courage, love and forgiveness. What an inspiration for us all. Love, shalom, and heartful thanks from Jane.
A powerful email too. Thank you so much. Really helps to get and set the scene for our viewers as well, to be encouraged by Susan's testimony. Yeah.
And in the scriptures, I think we had a few scriptures from Isaiah, but we might only have time for Isaiah 42, verse 16. Is that worth reading? This is the Lord speaking. I will bring the blind by a way they do not know. They did not know. I will lead them in paths they have not known. I will make darkness light before them and crooked places straight. These things I will do for them and not forsake them.
Yeah, try and go for the other one. We've got time.
Let's see if we can fit it in. It's Isaiah 41. This was the first one you came up with. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Yeah, so when we are going to face similar things in a way, Jesus did speak about it and warned us, as we head for Armageddon. And we can see that the clock is ticking. We saw that in the newspapers today. The Armageddon time is 90 seconds or something?
89 seconds. We've lost another second.
Yeah. So we look forward to the time, though, to lift up your heads because you know your deliverance is near. That is something which we could actually rejoice with, and we're not miserable people. We have hope in us because of our God who's gone before us. And thank you, Tim, for tonight, and also we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless you.